And now I'd like to open the meeting to the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Jeremy.
I am so grateful for all I am learning in this church and for all the ways my life has changed. I was reminded during a recent roundtable of the idea that science and health is our autobiography. When I had first heard that, I really had no idea what it meant. Last week, however, I was going through my computer, archiving old files, and I came across some things I had written before I came to this church. And to say the least, these writings were from a deeply depressed and troubled thought. As I read, I realized that everything I had written in the decade before I was led here was one long suicide note. And then I got it. Science and health is our autobiography because it is the story of our life with God, which is the only life. Anything we do that is supposedly outside of God is merely the story of what we do until that existence dies. I remember being in that dark place, moments from taking my life, and looking up at the ceiling and saying out loud, "God, I need your help." I knew it was now or never. Immediately, things changed, and within a week I was here in Plainfield. God does answer prayers and change lives, and I'm so grateful for how quickly He met my need when I was at my lowest. What a blessing Christian Science is, not just for the benefits it has brought me, but for knowing that there are so many others out there in that dark place, and the work done here is making a difference and will reach them. I can't go back and let myself know all will be well. I can, however, along with everyone at this church, reach out and let the world know just that. God is right here with us. I'm so grateful God brought me here. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary.
I'd like to express my gratitude for one of many life lessons that I've learned here in this church through Christian Science, and that is the importance and the meaning of tithing. When someone regularly and willingly and cheerfully tithes, it shows a great step of spiritual growth in their life. It shows a tremendous amount of trust in God for where their income, their health, everything comes from. The definition of tithing is a 10th part. And originally it meant to contribute 10% of whatever you earned to your church. Well, for most of us, that's quite a lot and quite a leap of faith. But real tithing shows a deep trust in God and in His provision for us. Christian Science teaches that God is the source of all good and that there is no limit whatsoever to His goodness. This was brought home to me very, very clearly, the experience I had many years ago through some very careless and willful and egotistical thinking. My business crashed and burned, and for better part of a year, lost a tremendous amount of money. For us, it was a tremendous amount of money. Needless to say, this was an extremely humbling experience for me. And I wanted very much to learn whatever lesson I needed to learn. And unfortunately, I had a very good practitioner from this church to help me. And during that time of losing money, we never cut back on our contribution to the church. And for a while there, we were tithing more than 100% of our income. But I was so grateful to God for the life that He had given me. I was so grateful to him for Christian Science that I couldn't stop giving to the church that I was so grateful for. And in about a year, the business stopped losing money and started making money. And then something really incredible happened. The business boomed far beyond any expectation that anybody ever had. And within a year, everything that we had lost was regained and more. It was just an incredible experience and demonstration to me of God's care for us. I will never forget this experience, and I'm so grateful for it because it taught me that the hand that is open to give is open to receive. That's a law of God. I'm so grateful for all the lessons I'm learning here in this church, and for Mary Baker Eddy for giving us this incredible science.
Thank you. Chardell from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Hello. Tonight I would like to express my gratitude for the prayerful, constant support of our practitioners at Plainfield. Last week I called my practitioner for prayerful help before a dental checkup. These visits have been a challenge for me for a long time. I was told to handle this like taking my car to a mechanic. Go in, get bumped around a little bit, and go right out. And that is exactly what happened. While doing my part of prayerful work and preparation, I used an article in the November issue of Love is the Liberator on page 20 called Handle the Claim. In the article, there is a quote from Mrs. Eddy. It goes like this: "Every law of matter or the body supposed to govern man is rendered null and void by the law of life, God." And from the article itself, when this type of error confronts us, we need to nail it and destroy it. Another thing worth mentioning is the unexpected exchange between the dental hygienist and myself. We were able to talk about God's love and protection in our lives and how He directs us. Thank you to God, my practitioner, Mrs. Eddy, and all of Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda from Pennsylvania, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the beautiful music and the beautiful readings tonight. I am very grateful for the Plainfield practitioner support. One of the things she had been praying with me recently was work relations. One situation was becoming a challenge for me not to react defensively, for I was being unjustly scrutinized, maligned, and accused of not doing my best. Meanwhile, I was scrambling around trying to make adjustments, follow constant changing, inconsistent suggestions. This was not solving the problem at hand and was becoming exasperating. Two truths that she shared with me really seemed to get my thought back on track and restore clarity and peace. The first was the reminder that I only work for God. And the second was not to let these situations take me away from my mission for working for God. And I was encouraged to read the story of Nehemiah that's in the lesson this week, and was reminded not to come down from the wall, to be distracted by temptations that try to draw us away from our connection with God. Within 24 hours, it was as if a mist or a fog was lifted. Situations and opportunities for new views, new plans, and change in attitudes and practical solutions came to light without any tinkering on my part. We have a very beautiful, good God. While this was quick, or happens to appear happen quickly, it really was not like waving a magic wand. There had been weeks of getting to know God better, changing my thinking, and using this pure Christian Science taught here and working closely with the practitioner and with biblical principles. I had to build up confidence and courage and stand with principle and not letting the wrong rule the right. It was moments of building upon each other. I'm very grateful for the fact that many were also benefited from this work, not just making my world better. I'm very grateful to Plainfield for Christian Science and for Mary Baker Eddy. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. Joanne from Florida, go ahead.
Many years ago, when I first came to this church, my husband and I would often go to dinner with a practitioner and her husband at a local restaurant. There was a young Middle Eastern man who always waited on us. He didn't have a formal education. He had recently come to the United States and barely spoke English. The practitioner could have prejudged him, but instead she saw him right as the perfect man in God's own likeness and loved him as a child of God. Each time we went there, she continued to love him and see him this way. And each time he appeared more refined and spoke a little bit more English. Well, the restaurant closed and we lost contact with him until 4 years later, while we were shopping in a department store, we saw him and barely recognized him. He hugged us and said he had married a nice young woman, had a child, went to school, and now had a job as a dining manager in a fine nearby restaurant. We credited this wonderful transformation to the practitioners consistently seeing him correctly and loving him as a child of God. Well, I had forgotten about this until recently. About 6 months ago, every day while biking, I would see a woman walking in our community. She was Haitian, dressed shabbily, had a strange demeanor, and didn't seem to belong in our neighborhood. I'm ashamed to say I found myself thinking, what is she doing here? Then I remembered the incident with the waiter that the practitioner loved. I started to see her right and love her as a child of God. I started to smile and say hello to her. I soon asked her name and started to use it every time I saw her. I also discovered she spoke only French, but we've been able to communicate basics with each other. She began to dress in better clothing, and I often told her how pretty she looked, in French, of course. 2 months ago, I gave her a copy of the 91st Psalm translated in French. Since then, I've seen her every Sunday morning, well attired in a lovely dress and shoes, standing outside our community gate. She told me she was waiting for her ride to church. I was so grateful to God for this transformation. And one more thing. Yesterday morning, while I was biking, I saw a young man and his little son leaving the building where she lives. I stopped and asked if they were her relatives. And the young man said, "Yes, she is my mother-in-law. Why?" I said, "She is my friend." Then the little boy, her grandson, smiled at me and said, "She told me about you." I could have wept for joy. I am moving gently at God's direction, which in itself is an amazing healing for me, and recently purchased a French copy of Science and Health, which I will give her as a Christmas gift. I am so grateful to the practitioner teacher who, through her example, taught me this wonderful lesson many years ago. I thank God for Mrs. Eddy for discovering Christian Science, and that there is no limit to the good it can bring into our lives.
Thank you. Luann from New York, go ahead.
Thank you. Over the past few days, I have been dealing with some distressing and negative thoughts. But one thing that has been helping me to hold my head above the water and wait upon the Lord is something I learned in my studies in Christian Science, that I am a representative of God, good, not of mortal mind. I am governed by principle, not self-will and chaos. In Leaves of Healing by Peter V. Ross, he states, "Getting out of trouble, you know, is largely a matter of waking up. Somehow or another, you have strayed into the realm of dreamland where you feel heavy, distressed, discouraged. You are not there, you only seem to be. This seeming can be dissipated by recapturing the normal sense of yourself, which temporarily you have lost sight of, by reminding yourself frequently of this stirring fact. I am a perfect blend with vital principle, and principle is a compound of limitless intelligence, animation, power. This explains why I think and walk and live and can do so with freedom and assurance. All restrictions on my activity are part of the dream, but I am not a dreamer. I am a doer. The Almighty propels me, and I like it. I will be up and about His business." Years ago, before I began learning the correct interpretation of the Bible, which teaches the truth of God and man, I was drowning in the inadequacy of self. I accepted the negative thoughts as reality and was pulled so deep into a hole that I could not find my way out. Now when the shadows start to creep in, I know I do not have to accept any part of these claims that want me to believe I am separate from God or anything less than what love has created. I can learn the lessons and move on, reaffirming my covenant with God. Understanding God better has brought a light into my life that I never could have imagined was possible. I am so grateful for it. Today was much more harmonious and peaceful as I worked to connect with the truth of my being. I am so grateful to God for the Christ Jesus and for Mrs. Eddy. I'm grateful for my practitioner who is constantly guiding me forward, reminding me that man is the expression of God and that personal sense has no part in that expression. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike from New York, go ahead.
Thank you very much for those beautiful testimonies. It is so humbling for me to follow those, but I am going to put in my mite. I started participating and then joined Plainfield Christian Science Church a very eventful 6 months ago. Certain events prevented me from having enough time to do the Plainfield Bible lessons, which I felt were a given, so I did them first, and to do very much of the extracurricular study I had been doing in the past few years on my own, which I kind of regretted. Thankfully, my life is becoming more efficient from the study and participation here, so that there's more time in sight to do more of this extracurricular study. Last week, I made some time to pick up one of my favorite bound volumes of the Christian Science Journal from 1889. I opened it randomly and started reading wonderfully illuminating articles, which led me to one of my favorites from the past, about Nehemiah rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem. The concept of building a wall of God around oneself for protection helped me many times in the past. It made me wish there would be a Bible study on the subject of Nehemiah. On Monday, much to my joy, I found the Bible lesson filled with the book of Nehemiah. I'm so grateful for these signs of the one mind, because through all my years in Christian Science, I could only speculate what this could be like. I know this change is within me. Proof of God's love in working through participating with the Plainfield Church. That wasn't enough. First two hymns tonight summed it up. This experience that no human voice can declare. I look forward to becoming more useful to do God's work through the teachings of Christ Jesus and Mary Baker Eddy, spiritually shared here at Plainfield. Thank you. very much.
Thank you. Craig.
On the wall of this church, thank you for those readings and the reminders of the healing that has taken place through Christ Jesus and is showing us what can be. And it's still going on here. My son has recently healed to the astonishment of an eye doctor, and it's really lightened my burden being in this church. On the wall it says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." And as a parent, this church certainly, and our practitioner, has given me rest from worry and from just being ready in any situation. He had eye surgery. They had reconstructed his eye socket with the support of our practitioner. And we've been told that man is God's idea, perfect, and I'm sure he was held that way. Well, just recently, 3 months later, the eye doctor looked at his eye and said, "In my 20 years of being an eye doctor, I've never seen this type of injury be restored the way this is." And I just smiled and knew that it was God doing it. Every time I talk to a practitioner about him, I'm told he's God's perfect child. And no accidents in the divine mind have been told before. It's just beautiful to see that he doesn't have to suffer from some odd thing. And he learned many lessons in the process. I find him more cooperative and a listening ear. Yeah, and he's been more responsible. People have commented on that even at school. I thank God for this church, and the healing that from way back is still going on. It's for everyone. Thank you for Mary Baker Eddy.
Thank you. This is Bruce, and I want to offer my thanks tonight for what this church has done for me. It's given me a much brighter and clearer sense of what it means to be good, because I went through life years and years, way too many, thinking I had to be successful at things, and I had to be in a place where other people could see, yeah, I was successful. Where's God in that picture? There's no substitute for just loving God and obeying Him and leaving the results to Him. And that's what I'm learning. But anyway, when I read this article that's on our website, it's in the carousel now, it's called "The Man in the Arena," I got to admit, I was thrilled. Just thrilled. Because it talked about this man who was in the middle of the work and compared him to the many others that were on the sidelines and watching and forming their own opinions of judgment and not doing one thing to help in the work. And it goes on to say, it's what this man was doing that made all the difference, and what all these other people are thinking, their opinions, meant nothing. Because succeed or fail, whatever, this man was doing his best according to his conscience. If he succeeded, it meant that he was thrilled to know that God's will is being done. And even if he didn't, then he was just as happy to be set apart from those others who knew nothing about victory or defeat because they haven't even tried. So I'm learning more and more. I don't want to look good. I just want to obey God and let Him look good, because He's the only good. And that's made an immense difference in my life, made me much happier and more peaceful. And it's taken off a lot of false responsibility and opened up other channels for good. I'm very grateful for it. Florence or Day, go ahead.
Thank you. This is Florence. Thank you for the beautiful readings and the deeply touching testimonies. Tonight, I'd like to give gratitude to Mrs. Eddy for what she has taught about the word love with a capital. She said, "There is no discordant claim that you cannot love yourself out of." There was a time in my life when I would hesitate to use or write the word love. I didn't particularly feel it for myself and certainly did not feel it towards others. I felt hurt in so many ways and therefore felt justified not loving because at least I wasn't hurting anyone, not openly. When I learned that if I wasn't feeling love, then other emotions like fear, worry, uncertainty, resentment, anger, depression must be holding sway, and that indifference was really hate, I started examining my thoughts more and to pay more attention to my feeling and start living this great word, love. Like all the truths we've learned about, I had to start practicing love consistently and know that I can love because I express God. I had to think of myself correctly and to think of others correctly, as we have heard in the other testimony. The examples of Christ Jesus, Mrs. Eddy, and others, and so many people that I've read about how they could continue to love no matter what, has been a great source of inspiration. The practice of thinking love, whenever a wrong thought came, whenever I felt bad, and most of the time, wherever I am, really striving to uplift my thought and think about God's love for me and others, has really helped me to live the spirit of the word and the higher meaning of it. I thank God for our watches, the teaching to pray unceasingly, because these cannot be done without love. One of Mrs. Eddy's students quoted her saying that in her response to the question, how can healing be done through prayer, she said, just live love. Be it. Love, love, love. Do not know anything but love. Be all love. There is nothing else. That will do the work. It will heal everything. Be nothing but love. This was from We Knew Mary Baker Eddy, I think it's the second book, page 134. Yes, love does heal our own ills and lift others up. It does heal every claim. Thank God for all Mrs. Eddy's sacrifice to give this truth to all mankind. Thank God for all at Plainfield who have stood to share what they learned, and for all the beautiful testimonies in tonight's meeting. Thank everyone.
Thank you. Mary.
Okay, well, I will read some things tonight. We had so many things, I'll have to read some more next week. But on our website bulletin board, first from Pennsylvania, I must give thanks for our watches. The posted one for the past week has been a constant reminder that our well-being is already established, and so do not labor to fix something. Also, the Saturday Unity Watch was so powerful. Here is part of it. Quote, animal magnetism has no argument to sway our hearts, stop our work, or deny God's idea their rightful place in His creation. And then Florida. Thank you, Florence, for faithfully compiling these forum highlights. They are such timeless and helpful recordings of God's morning thoughts with us. Thank you, and this is Georgia. Thank you, Chardell, for the very uplifting Bible study. It was filled with such joy. Always a pleasure attending these healing activities at Plainfield. And then Australia. The Wednesday service with its beautiful music, readings, and testimonies was superb, truly heartfelt. So much so that I had tears streaming down my face. I thought, well, you can't get much better than that. Then you followed with a Unity Watch for Thursday that was absolutely perfect. It just keeps getting better and better. Thanks, Plainfield, for sharing genuine Christian Science with the world. And then Virginia. Thank you, Mrs. Roberts, for issue 55 of Forum Highlights, which is featured on the carousel. I feel comforted and empowered from reading the messages found here. Many thanks for this great work to share these truths with all. And then Florida. Please extend my thanks to the Wednesday organist. The music is beautiful, and thanks to all for such inspiring services. And then this is an email from someone new from Australia who I think might be listening tonight, she and her husband, and if you are, hello. She says, hello. I have attended my local Christian Science church fairly regularly for about 4 years, and I have taken class instruction. I love Christian Science, but feel the truth of it has eluded me. I came out of class none the wiser, much to my disappointment. I found your website 2 days ago and can feel such a difference already. I feel that I will get an understanding of the science. And many thanks. And this from New Hampshire. Dear friends, I have such wonderful memories of my 2 visits to Plainfield and all the love that was expressed. Once was Easter Sunday, and we all wore hats. And then there was a party in the evening with much love and gratitude. Well, that is certainly a blast from the past. Okay, and then Virginia. Dear fellow members, the enclosed contribution is sent with many thanks for all the good that this church continues to do in teaching and sharing the truth and in healing works, with much gratitude. And then this is a testimony from New York. I want to express my gratitude for the wonderful Christian Science practitioner in Plainfield. I have been battling serious physical issues for the past couple of years. I have used other practitioners with some relative relief, but the condition always returns in a more aggravated form. Last Sunday, I started feeling symptoms of another condition, which I knew could become a really serious situation. I knew I needed to get help, and I resorted to medical means. I also was well aware that I couldn't contact a practitioner from the Christian Science Journal, as they wouldn't take the case of one who has turned to medical means. In this dark hour of need and desperation, I contacted a Plainfield practitioner and explained my situation. She very graciously agreed to help me and provided me with thoughts to think upon that would help. The next day when I went to work, I work in a heavily medical insurance company, and the discussion of disease and its consequences is constantly scrutinized in meetings. I sent an email to the practitioner before going into the daily meeting. She immediately replied, "Are you at this meeting with a lot of love in your heart, or are you feeling resentment for being there and for those there?" I literally gasped. I had been looking at everyone in that meeting with dislike and resentment, criticism, and judgment, all the things that make us sick. I'm deeply grateful that the practitioner has had such quick insight into what exactly was going on in my thinking. I later called her and told her I needed help to change my thoughts. I'm starting to accept the fact that it is not others but myself that has to change. I want to know and feel everyone I meet is God's child, no matter who they are or how they act. I'm very grateful for Christian Science and Mary Baker Eddy's discovery of it, and for this church, and for the wonderful practitioner who is helping me in this journey. I'm very grateful tonight for the beautiful music, the beautiful readings tonight, so well read, and then to hear such inspired testimonies. In the lesson this week in Nehemiah, there's a short statement. Neither be ye sorry, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. I was thinking about that and remembering at one time in my life when I was very depressed. Along with being depressed, I also felt very lethargic, tired, and weak. It would seem that depression and weakness go hand in hand, just as joy and strength go hand in hand. I remember that time in my life really as a living hell, and I was so grateful that I came here and began to work with a practitioner and saw a great and tremendous light. For the first time in my life, to have a purpose in life, to have an understanding of what real science is, how to apply it, how it can transform you from such a state of darkness into one of light and joy and also strength. Because when you have that joy in the Lord, when you find your joy in God, not in people, places, or things, but in God, in realizing what a loving Father He is, and we have so much to do for Him as He works through us, well, that creates an energy and a strength and a power that can only come from God. Has that ever changed my life? And I am so grateful. I'm so grateful to know that the joy of the Lord is your strength. So grateful to be here tonight, to know that our God is real, as we've heard. He's right with us, right here and right now. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.